Hi, riders. So I've had this Suron come in and I've ridden it for a couple weeks now. I wanted to do a little bit of a review on the bike, seeing as how when I bought it, I did a lot of research online and I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and it was kind of hard for me to get a good impression of what this bike is. I didn't really understand how it rode or where it fit in or where to be able to use it. Um, it's really hard to get a test ride on one of these things. If you're like me or a lot of people out there, you pretty much just have to uh, put an order in blindly and then get a feel for the bike once it arrives. So just want to give you guys a little bit of background on myself. Um, Maybe 10 years ago, I used to ride a lot of downhill mountain biking, lift access stuff. And then I kind of gave that up, um, and I went into dirt bikes. And the reason I went into dirt bikes was the downhill mountain biking, it was pretty expensive, and it was just too hard to access. Like to drive away to the mountains, to haul your bike out, just to put in a weekend of riding was a lot of effort. So I'm going to try to do a quick review and kind of run over the things that I didn't really see online, um, talking about the Suron and how it fits in between these two bikes. So one of the biggest things I noticed on YouTube and on the internet is a lot of people are comparing the Suron to a dirt bike, to a full-size dirt bike. And they're asking the question, can the Suron replace a dirt bike? Or how is it compared to a dirt bike? Or how do the lap times compare when I'm riding in the woods or across a race circuit or doing laps or um, kind of A to B comparisons? And I think the problem with that is when you compare the Suron to a full-size dirt bike, they're not really in the same league. And so when I ordered this, I had already read a few comments about it, but I didn't really believe people. I thought, well, this doesn't make sense. Like the Suron, it's got the power. Like technically, it has the power of a pit bike. It's got the frame design. It's got all these things. Like why can't it be um, comparable to a dirt bike? Not a lot of people, pretty much no one has touched on this one thing. And the main thing that separates the Suron from a full-size dirt bike is the wheelbase. No one's ever talked. This isn't a full-size bike, but what people don't tell you is it's not even as large as a downhill bike. So let me explain. So this is a shot side by side. I kind of line them up. And this is not a full-fledged downhill bike. This is a trail bike. This is like a kind of all mountain, older, it's a Specialized SX trail. It's not really full downhill mountain sled kind of thing. But you can already see, I've tried to line up the rear wheels, the rear tires, so you can get an idea. But this Suron actually looks like 6 inches, maybe 5 or 6 inches shorter than a mountain bike. You see that? What does that mean? The Suron, the way the chassis handles, the way it steers, it's twitchier than an all mountain style mountain bike, and it's twitchier than a downhill style mountain bike. It just doesn't have the wheelbase, like the length of wheelbase, to give the same kind of stability in the straights and over rough chop. So it handles, the handling you can't really compare to a regular dirt bike. And so I'll pull the dirt bike out and I'll let you see the difference in wheelbase too. So there you go. There it is sitting next to a full-size dirt bike. That's an old Husqvarna WR250 two-stroke. And you can see the back tires are lined up. You can see the size difference now. It's huge, right? This is like a 3/4 the size of a dirt bike. So now the question is, can this replace a dirt bike? And I think we should kind of examine what you're really trying to ask there. Are you trying to ask, can I go out with a Suron and turn the same lap times and ride the same terrain the same way as a full-size dirt bike? And can I go riding with my friends on full-size dirt bikes when I just have a Suron? And the answer really is no and maybe. So with the Suron, comparing the Suron to a full-size dirt bike is like comparing a go-kart to a full-size car. Now, if your objective is just to go out there and have fun, arguably the go-kart gives you just as much fun as lapping a race car on a track, just at a different speed and a different style of driving. And that's basically how I look at the Sur-Ron. Will it tackle the same kind of rough terrain, hard enduro, woods riding, hill climb, stuff like that as a full-size dirt bike? No, it won't, because of the wheelbase, because of the suspension's kind of limited. The cockpit's pretty small. But that being said, riding the Sur-Ron on its own is not less rewarding than riding the dirt bike. It's just as much fun to ride the Sur-Ron hard as it is to take the dirt bike out and ride it hard. So what do I mean by one bike isn't funner than the other because of the speed? So let me just give you an example. I went around a local sandy area today on the Sur-Ron that I usually ride with the dirt bikes. And I've had a bunch of dirt bikes throughout the years, maybe like dozens. I'm usually a Husqvarna or KTM guy, but I've had 4-strokes, big bore 4-strokes like 500, 450. I've ridden 2-strokes and had 250s, 300s, even had smaller 4-strokes. And the area that I ride, sandy and whoops, hill climb, stuff like that. The dirt bike, through the whoops, I'll be like 3rd gear, 4th gear tapped, just blasting through the whoops. Like if you guys ride fast whoops, you know what I mean. When you just float and you just let the front and back just smash through the whoops. You hold the throttle wide open and you're just clamping the bike with your legs and just letting it get all over the place. And you just keep the power on and it just powers straight through. So I rode that kind of stuff today on the Sur-Ron. But the difference was that instead of skipping over whoops and just pounding them, now the Sur-Ron's short wheelbase was able to like single and double the whoops. And because of the weight and because like the precision of this bike, I slowed down like maybe half the speed I was going before, but it was just as much fun to try to single and double those whoops rather than just keep the throttle pinned and smash my way through like on the dirt bike. Same thing with corners, same thing with hill climbs. On the bike, on the moto, the line selection is still pretty critical, but the power lets you get away with a lot of stuff, especially if you have a bigger bike or you have a 300 and you get it into the power band. You guys might know what I mean. It lets you get away with a lot, and it lets you, like if you chug your way up or if you've got, like this bike's got a recluse, there's a lot of things you can get away with on a dirt bike. But on the Sur-Ron, you're able to slow down and you're able to pick your line and you're able to put your wheels way, way more precisely than the full-size dirt bike. You're able to aim for ruts, you're able to balance on areas of good traction, stuff like that. One of the hugest differences between these two is the way you get ready to ride. So the dirt bike, and don't get me wrong, I've been riding dirt bikes for 15 years. It's a lot of work to get going. Like you load your dirt bike into your truck, you get your gas, you take it off and you got your stand and then you're kicking, or if you've got e-start, you still gotta let the bike warm up while you get geared up. And it's at the end of the hard day of riding, you're loading the bike, you're unloading, you're getting home, you're washing it. Stuff like that, it adds to the day, right? Like you might have a day of riding, you put in a few good hours, but the loading and the unloading and the maintenance part of it might take you suck up another 45 minutes on either end. The Sur-Ron is way different. So all you have to do is make sure your battery is charged and you turn the key and you go. You just turn the key and you twist the throttle and you're riding. Like there's no warm up. This thing is so light. So you'll hear guys complain it's heavy, and those guys are mountain bike guys. So they're going to go on about, oh, my bike's only 30 pounds. My downhill bike's only 35 pounds. This thing is 100 pounds. But if you come from a dirt bike background, 100 pounds is nothing. Like if this bike gets stuck in hard enduro over a log, guys, I'm 5'9" and 165 pounds. I could pick this bike up with both arms and just carry it over whatever obstacle it's hung up on. And that's like the biggest difference between these two. And to load this Sur-Ron up, I don't even need a ramp. Like today I just took it out and I put it in the back of a van. And I just lifted the front wheel, lifted the back wheel, tossed it in there, 2 tiny little tie straps. It took me 5 minutes to load. It took me almost as long to load all my moto gear as it did to throw this thing into a back of a van. So what are my overall impressions of this bike and the build quality, how it works and everything? So suspension, it's not the greatest. The fork, I got these upside down Chinese made forks. I think they're air forks. They're really nothing special. They have rebound and preload, like air pressure adjustability, compared to really nice downhill forks, like a set of Fox 40s. There's a ton of stiction on these. They kind of feel weird re-extending after bottoming out. It feels like there's a lot of stiction and the fork's not moving smoothly. It's not rebounding all the way, like consistently each time. But for the price point, which is like, this bike is like $4,000. I mean, the fact that you're even getting adjustability is a plus. Let's just say the front is adequate. The rear shock, maybe a little bit better than the front. Really, I don't see a need to upgrade. I know a lot of guys are going out and throwing money at suspension on these bikes, and my advice would be to wait, because this stuff is all kind of second-rate downhill mountain bike stuff. But once this sector catches on a little bit, you're going to see tuners come out. You're going to see dedicated forks and shocks that are made for bikes like this that are like 100 pounds, 150 pounds, that are a little bit more light duty than something like for a little 85 two-stroke, CR or something. Like, it's not you're going to see stuff that's lighter duty than the lightest dirt bike stuff, but heavier duty than the heaviest downhill mountain bike stuff. And that's the stuff you want to be buying. You could go out and get a Fox 40, and drop like get some nice Fox suspension. And I've ridden the best. I've had Fox 40s and Fox suspension, really nice stuff on my downhill bikes. Yes, it's amazing, but compared to something like that, this is like a 6 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10. It's still rideable. Like, let's be honest, it's still rideable. It's not complete trash. So the rest of the bike, the chassis, I got to give them credit for that, for a Chinese-made bike. The welds are super clean. It's a hydroformed aluminum chassis, so there's a lot of thought that's gone into this. And some people are saying, well, like, why don't you just get the drill mountain bike, or why don't you get the drill e-bike or this bike or that bike? And you look at some of these bikes from these startup companies, and nothing is to like this degree of manufacturing, like hydroformed aluminum. Come on, like, the other bike is like a tube frame that's welded. It's not even in the same universe as this, and this has got a linkage. So brakes, I mean, they're downhill brakes, and they're not the greatest downhill brakes, so they're adequate, they're okay. Wheels and tires. This is a tough one. So the wheels that came on this thing are kind of strange. It looks like a mountain bike, a little bit beefier than a mountain bike hub, but the bearings in it are tiny. So just to give you an example here. So guys, this is what a wheel bearing from a dirt bike looks like. This is off, I think, a KTM full-size dirt bike wheel. And just look at that. Right, so now you can see why this bike only weighs 100 pounds. That's a wheel bearing from full-size dirt bike. The ones in here are tiny. The rims are not bad. They're 19-inch. They're all right. They look heavy-dutier than some downhill mountain bike rims, but they're nowhere near as good as a proper like Excel wheel like this or something. Tires, I've already gone and upgraded the front on my bike to a moto tire, and I think this is an M203 or something like that, and it's made a huge difference. This is a stock tire that they come with, and kind of the same idea. These tires are kind of halfway between downhill mountain bike and dirt bike. So the problem with these is the knobs are really soft. They don't have a lot of stiffness in the side knob. A design fault of these tires, and kind of a limitation. So if you're going to be doing a lot of areas with kind of loose, loomy, dry, silty dirt, you'll want to upgrade at least the front right away, and that's a huge, huge improvement. So the power, how does this compare power-wise? And I know I said you shouldn't compare the two, but how does it compare? Because, they give these readings, or they give these ratings in kilowatts, I don't know why they do that. I mean, I guess I understand because it's an electric motor, but at least convert it over to horsepower so everyone knows what you're getting. Because really, what does 5 kilowatts mean? What does 3 kilowatts mean? 10 kilowatts, 14 kilowatts? Just give it to us in horsepower. Everyone knows horsepower. It's like trying to teach people kilograms when everyone already knows their weight in pounds. So this bike, stock with all the limitations, a wire cut, de-restricted or whatever you call it. It feels like a very snappy DRZ 125 or a Yamaha TTR 125. Like it's not, the top end power isn't really there. It tops out at, I think, like 45, kind of 50, and it doesn't have gears, but the throttle response is way more snappy than a lot of the motorbikes. So just picture like the power level of the 125 four-stroke, but snappy, like really well-tuned, like a crisp, like 250 motorbike, like with a really good carb on it or fuel injection. So the power, is it enough? Like it feels pretty good. Like, don't get me wrong, I've had fast bikes. I've had like, like I said, 500s. I've had 300 two-strokes, even like a Husberg 570, like really torquey bikes. The Sur-Ron doesn't feel lacking in power. The only complaint is that when the battery is fully charged at 100%, you'll get lots of snap. You snap the throttle open and this thing will pick the front wheel up. But as soon as you get down to like 70% throttle, you lose a lot of that snap and it kind of tapers off. And this is an issue with all e-bikes. I even have the same thing on my e-mountain bike. It's not just limited to this bike, so can't really fault them for that. I mean, battery technology is only going to get better, and we should see that improve. So having said all that, would I buy this bike again for the price of like $4,000 or whatever it's stickered at now? And my answer is absolutely yes. It's wrong to compare this bike dollar for dollar to a dirt bike because this bike is not in the same category. Like you can do stuff with this bike that you just can't get away with. It's not a dirt bike. You can't take this dirt bike and say, oh, I got to get it somewhere. I don't have a truck. I'm just going to toss it sideways in the back of an SUV. It just doesn't work that way, but you can do that with this Sur-Ron. And you can't, like, here's another example. I take this Sur-Ron out every night. There's like a construction area close by my neighborhood, and I go around there and I rip around for like 45 minutes a night. I don't wreck anything, or I'm respectful. And I go and ride in a lot of like undeveloped areas, like power lines, stuff like that within city limits. I can never do that on a dirt bike. Like as soon as I fire up that two-stroke or a four-stroke, people are going to be calling the cops on me. But I can do that with this bike. And you know what? If someone sees me, like that's why I picked the silver color, because if you pick the black, it looks way more like a dirt bike because you see that hole, you look at it far away and it just looks like a dirt bike. But at least with a different color frame, when you're a few hundred feet away from someone, all you see is the frame and like a black background, right? So it looks way more like a mountain bike than a straight on dirt bike. That's what this bike is for. It's just for you to enjoy. Like you go out in the woods with your friends on Sur-Rons, or you go out by yourself, and you just have fun. Like you do sessions, you get into the flow, you ride your own bike well. And that's all it's about. Like it's not about beating your chest and saying like, yeah, I have the fastest bike, or I can do the steepest hill climb, run the fastest lap time. I can run moto tracks with the big guys and all this stuff. Like that's really not what this bike is about. This bike is just about going out there and having fun on your own. And yeah, it's super rewarding to ride. It's a little twitchy. It keeps you on your toes. But once you learn to flick it around, once you learn how to weight and de-weight this thing, you can do things that mountain bikers can do and dirt bikers could only dream of doing, because of the wheelbase difference on this bike. You can't flick a dirt bike the same way. You can't lay it from side to side, thread it between like tight trees, stuff like that, the way the Sur-Ron can. So what are the cons of this bike? Like what are the downsides? For the price point, it's hard to kind of pick away at them because, it is a Chinese built bike, and to come as far as they did, like with the frame quality, swing arm, decent shock, like as a package, overall it's pretty decent. There's just a few things that I don't like, and one of the things I really don't like is just that this bike feels a little bit unfinished. Like it's missing a few things. Like, really, if you ride any kind of moto, if you've ever been on a dirt bike before, you instantly go like, why is this missing? Like here, like every dirt bike comes with a front fender, no front fender. So as you're going down the trail, you're getting rocks, sand, branches, whatever, just like flung straight up at your face. So that's one of the things I'm going to get right away. Same story with the back. I mean, it's got this little shorty thing, but really no mud flap for the rear shock to protect the rear shock. Like, it's pretty standard on every bike. Same with like a chain guard, no chain slider. Chain slider might not be such a big deal on this bike because the chain doesn't really slap around too much because it goes around the swing arm bolt. The sprocket goes in the swing arm bolt there, but still it'd be nice to just like include something. Like all these little things you just got to go order. Like really, what would it have cost around to add on to this bike? Like maybe a few bucks. You know, like do I really need something like this? No. But other than that, I think as a package, it's really good. The biggest complaint or the biggest upgrade I would do right away, guys, the cockpit is really small on this bike, like really, really small. I'm 5'9", 5'10", and with the stock bars, within the first few minutes, I was cramping up. I'm like, this thing is barely rideable because I'm basically doing a push-up on the front bar. Like even in proper mountain bike, motorbike attack position with your elbows up, your weight low, still way, way too low. And on a bike like this, you really notice it because of the short wheelbase and the light weight. When you shift your weight over the front, over the bars like that, because you're stooped over, it makes the bike handle like way more twitchy. So right away I did the 3-inch riser bars from Pro Taper, and even with these guys, it's still too low. It's still way too low. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get either a riser stem or an adjustable stem, and we'll see how that works out. Other than that, the protection, a few things here and there. Like overall as a package, I think this bike is really a home run. Like if you guys are on the fence about ordering one of these, just go out and pull the trigger. Like they're not going to go on sale. They're not going to become more available. We're getting with these stupid COVID shortages, like everything's out of stock. Like tires are out of stock, parts are out of stock. Pretty soon, even if you want one of these, you're going to have to be waiting like months on it. Like I got lucky and I had to wait maybe like 3 weeks for this thing to get out of a crate from China. But if you're thinking about this, it's a blast. It's not comparable to a full-size dirt bike, so don't go thinking you're going to go race dirt bikes or you're going to do this and do that, set lap times or whatever. Like forget about all that. You're going to get this bike, you're going to go out there and have a blast and just ripping on this bike. Like you're going to have so much fun. You're going to flick this around. You're going to do hard enduro stuff. That's so much easier. Like one of the things and I've been riding hard enduro for like maybe like 5 or 6 years. And one of the gripes I have with hard enduro is people don't like to talk about it. People say like, well, the size of the rider doesn't matter. It's all about skill. It's all about technique. And I mean, no, like in real life, size does matter. Like if you're a tall guy with a lot of upper body strength, you're going to be able to muscle around a full-size bike and make it do things that a shorter guy who's, 5'5", 5'8", 5'10", whatever, they just can't do. There are like super talented riders, usually who start with a trials background or something. Like, oh, people will say, look at Graham Jarvis or look at, whatever. Like, yeah, sure. I mean, there is, with the technique, you can overcome a height disadvantage. But honestly, like, it's just like basketball. So like the taller you are, the more advantage you have in hard enduro, because just the way you can shift your weight, the leverage you have standing over the bike, dabbing, stuff like that. And that's the one thing I always found that I felt like I was lacking, not because of strength or muscle or anything like that, but just the height and the leverage. Like I always found that I couldn't muscle around or I couldn't do certain techniques on a full-size bike like I wanted to. Like I could do them on a trials bike, but not on a full-size dirt bike. So that's basically why the Sur-Ron is a game changer for me, because at 5'9", 5'10", the second I hopped on this Sur-Ron, after like 15 years of riding dirt bikes, mountain bikes, downhill, stuff like that, and riding hard enduro, I could suddenly do all the things that I struggled with for years with a full-size dirt bike. Just the way you can stand over a bike and use your strength and use your leverage. Like it's pretty much comparable to me being 6'3" or 6'5" and jumping on a full-size dirt bike. It's the advantage that I suddenly get back going to a smaller bike. And that's kind of my point with the Sur-Ron, is it fits really neatly in the class just between a dirt bike, a full-size dirt bike, and a full suspension, kind of more downhill oriented mountain bike. And I see a lot of people saying like, well, why should I buy this Sur-Ron if it can't keep up with a dirt bike? Or like, how can I modify it? How can I get like the back control 72-volt battery and make this thing do like 90 miles an hour? Like that's not the point of this bike at all. Like if that's your goal, if your only yardstick is to try to make this thing outrun or keep up with a dirt bike, you're going to be really disappointed because it just doesn't have the wheelbase. Like sure, you can get it up to 70, you can get it up to 90. It's going to be twitchy as hell. You're not going to be able to float over the rough stuff and keep up with a dirt bike in the open class stuff. So you're better off just getting this Sur-Ron, and you're better off just riding it, like enjoying it for what it is. Like the chassis is really rewarding to ride. It's really lightweight. You're able to do things and flick it around like you can't do with a full-size dirt bike. Really, your goal with a Sur-Ron shouldn't be like, well, what do I got to do to keep up with dirt bikes? It should be, where can I find tighter trails? Like, where can I find harder obstacles that the Sur-Ron would be better at, would be more fun to ride? Or where can I find stuff that requires like better balance or better throttle control or better whatever, like just more finesse that would be too much for a full-size dirt bike to go like being all clumsy, like trying to ride through, and you can thread this thing like a needle. That's like what this bike is about. Because of the size and the weight of it, you're able to ride it super, super aggressively. And for guys who have ridden moto, you'll understand this is sometimes when you pitch a dirt bike into a certain rough section or do something with it, the bike gets out of shape and it'll tank slap, or you'll get it to hook and then it'll start to buck you off on the rear or something like that. And there's a lot of times where it takes a lot of strength and a lot of skill and timing, a lot of like body strength and core strength and balance to get that bike back in line. And I call that like gathering the bike back up, you know, when it's everything sideways and you gather it back up and you get it back into that rut, or you get it back in line. And that is just like many, many times easier with the Sur-Ron, just because of the weight, because of how you stand over the thing, because of your height advantage all of a sudden. It's literally, like I said before, like if you were to get onto a full-size dirt bike and all of a sudden you're 300 pounds, built, 7 feet tall, riding this normal-sized dirt bike, that's how you feel on a Sur-Ron. So that's one of the greatest strengths, one of the things I love best about this bike. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to wrap it up. If you guys are on the fence, just get the Sur-Ron. It's not a dirt bike. Don't compare the two, but you're going to get one of these. You're going to have an absolute blast on it. It's an absolutely fun bike to ride. I don't regret getting one of these at all, and I think for the price, it's actually a really decent package for what you get. There's a few things you have to sort out, but overall, I think, yeah, definitely worth the money. Definitely consider this bike if you're looking for something that you want to slot between a moto bike and a mountain bike. Thanks, guys.